Thank you, Tim. Good morning. I'm going to use the microphone because my voice is a bit down this morning. I would like to thank the organizers to organize the schedule in a way that our presentation is right after my DJ set last night. So, thank you for helping me to believe in my superpowers. So this is quite a special moment for us here today. So thank you for sharing this moment with us this morning. So this session is going to be about a book that we manifested together. This book here. So I will go through. Sorry if I'm gonna use paper to help me through because I need it this morning. So I would like to tell you how the book came together. So during the Breaking Convention in 2015, Maria Papaspyrou curated a panel called the Femtheogenesis. And part of this panel, so this is my clicker. Yeah, so this was the panel. It was a panel with the intention to bring together a collective of female voices in psychedelic culture that would explore the links between the feminine principle and altered states of consciousness. Parts of this panel were Maria, Anna Luke, the amazing Kathleen Harrison, and Daniela Peluso. The panel was so good, the talks were so inspiring, maybe some of you were there, that after the panel we thought, hey, maybe we put an anthology together. Maybe it's really time that we give spaces to all those voices that are a bit underrepresented in the psychedelic culture. And so, we also came together with David Luke, because also he was a big part of putting the panel together. And 4 years later, we are excited to be here to present the fruits of that vision, a book that was just published by Park Street Press with the title Psychedelic Mysteries of the Feminine. In this intro, I will guide you through the process of how the book came together, while Maria will later speak about the concept behind it, followed by Krista McKinnon, Tim Reed, Lorna O'Dowd, and Cameron Adams, all contributors to the anthology, who will share a presentation about their chapter. And then together we will do a panel with for questions and answers. So in the manifestation of this book, we were guided by a principle of inclusion and validation of one's own path towards knowledge and wisdom. We sent the call for papers out to women of all walks of life, academics, therapists, independent researchers, poets, painters, PhD students, teachers, medicine women, and we were so inclusive that we included men as well. Because we felt that their voice belonged to this space as well, especially when speaking about the feminine principle, which resides in men as well. So we are happy about the variety of voices that we were able to put together, but we are also aware of the lack of racial diversity, for example, among the contributors, and also on the lack of variety on sexual orientation and gender identity, a gap we were not able to bridge 4 years ago through our networks. A situation we would probably be a bit different already now, and this is great, because the scene is becoming more and more conscious of this gap, and more diverse voices are becoming part of this space, as we can also see by the program of this Breaking Convention this year, where we have these kind of topics that are part of the program much more than they used to be. So we hope that the following books will be even more inclusive than we could be with this one. So I would like to start. So we will take a look inside the book, and we see how the chapters are divided, besides sending our gratitude to Alison Gray for agreeing to write the foreword for the book. So we start with the collective archetypal dimensions, where humanity's psychic inheritance is stored. The journey begins with Maria Papaspyrou, who explores the links between the archetypal feminine, altered states of consciousness, and nature, discovering that their shared qualities have also been the very reason for their suppression. She argues that the archetypal feminine is a psychic construct that belongs to both men and women, and restoring it is a collective responsibility. The work of Patricia Iolana is next. She explores two paths to goddess consciousness, or we consciousness, in support of our connection to the archetypal feminine, the analytic path and the embodied ritual, illustrating how both of them can guide us to the deep psychic work with the Jungian anima. The next chapter is comprised of Tim Reed's essay on inner encounters with the transformative power of the dark and devouring aspect of the archetypal feminine through altered states and holotropic breathwork, and he will tell us more in his presentation today. In the second section, there we are. In the second section, we take a deep dive into the past to discover the role of women and the feminine in shamanic rituals and lore of different lands and times. We were honored to have the fruit of Max Dashu's decades-long research demonstrating that women have been shamans, witches, medicine women, and oracles since time immemorial, defining in their rituals what is considered humanly possible. Her essay takes us through the African, Asian, American, and European continents, providing a much-needed view into diverse cultural expressions of practices of altered states of consciousness across the world. The rest of the chapter focuses on women harnessing technique of ecstasy, both in Southern and Northern Europe, as a way to reclaim Western's own tradition of altered states. The monadic rites of Dionysus, described by me, are seen as the missing link between primitive goddess shamanic traditions and the practices of the witches of modern Europe, enticing the spirits of both women and men in rites and rituals that transcended binary sexual identities. Karl Rack's essay explains how symbols connected to both masculine and feminine sexual organs, together with the use of psychotropic substances, were used in mystery religions of ancient Greece as a way to underline the importance of the balance and union of the opposites as the core of mystical knowledge. In the case of Northern Europe, Maria Kvilhaug introduces us to the vulvas of Norse mythology. These were highly respected women, carriers of ancient knowledge pertaining to powerful rituals of witchcraft, which were able to affect people, animals, and the environment. The third section brings us towards embodied experience. Embodied experience as a source of wisdom and ultimately of life itself. Krista McKinnon begins by highlighting how we can heal the patriarchal system of domination through embodied work, in particular through trance dance, as she will later explain in her presentation. And I would like to underline that she will make a presentation that is open to everyone, because there is a mistake in the program that lists it as a workshop only for women. So it is not, it's a presentation and everybody is welcome. Alana Bliss, in the next chapter, she reveals how giving birth can be a psychedelic, ecstatic, and even orgasmic experience, considering how the body, through the release of specific hormones, supports this journey into an altered state. The following chapter by Shona Home introduces us to some very special women using techniques to alter states in therapeutic contexts, thus reclaiming women's heritage as shamanic healers within the current cultural paradigm. The next section defines those psychedelic principles inspired and informed by a feminine perspective. Kathleen Harrison, one of the elders of our community, often unfairly eclipsed by the fame of her ex-husband, Terence McKenna, gifts us with her wisdom on how psychedelics can support the recognition of the aliveness and consciousness across creation, from plants to animals to the earth itself. Next, Anna Luke defines radical uncertainty as a fundamental aspect of existence that has been deeply undervalued by the prevailing patriarchal culture. She argues that plant medicines might offer a much-needed bridge back to a certain reverence for darkness and the capacity to tolerate uncertainty as an increasingly urgent social and environmental need. Eleonora Molnar concludes this section of the book with an essay on bioethics within the context of psychoactive substance use. She discusses the negative effect of their transgression and how, as a community, we need to maintain a collective voice, able to safeguard the ritual spaces for the exploration of altered states, where people's vulnerability should be matched with an adequate level of integrity on the part of the space holders. The next section deals with contemporary gender discourse. What is masculine? What is feminine? Are they just cultural categories, or they do actually represent a biological reality? Both Lorna Olivia O'Dowd and Cameron Adams, who originally co-authored with Timmy Davis his chapter, are here today and will offer an in-depth report of their perspectives on the limitations of essentializing the feminine. In the next section, we look into the mysteries of the creative process and the power of vision. Martina Hoffman and Amanda Sage share about their creative process, drawing from visionary experiences of altered states, often channeling the manifestation of feminine presence and energy. Their work, together with that of other visionary artists, is also contained in the book, in beautiful colored pages. Alana Bliss reminds us of the sacred nature of giving birth, while Omolewa closes out this section with two wonderful poems on the wonders of the creative force of birth and transformation, held deep within women's bodies. The final section of the book is dedicated to feminist psychedelic activism as a space to seed ideas towards collective action. Annie Oak talks about the creation of the Women's Visionary Congress as a way to gather a council of wise women experienced in psychedelic knowledge. She discusses the core values they have been building on to develop a sustainable community of inquiry. Adam Aronovich offers a significant critique about the current medical ethos that pervades Western psychiatry. He offers thoughts on an alternative, post-patriarchal, post-colonial, inclusive medical model that returns the spirit, the intuitive body, and the heart back into the treatment, much in line with the healing process supported by plant medicines. Nadia Erlam uses a feminist filter to explore the current drug classification, to explore the current drug classification system and reveal its discriminatory bias against neurodiversity. Nadia illustrates the power struggles and the colonial trajectory that hide behind the criminalization of psychedelic substances. As the book nears its end, Charlotte Walsh asserts that the current propaganda-based drug classification system is violating the freedom of altering one's consciousness, constituting an infringement on the principle of cognitive liberty, which should be regarded as a fundamental human right. She argues that unless this fundamental right is respected and upheld, conditions for a more just society that is able to support the flourishing of humanity's full potential will never take hold. And finally, I would also like to mention all the visionary artists that have contributed to the book. So thank you for staying with me through this analysis of all these chapters. It's a lot. And yeah, I hope you saw what I was meaning at the beginning with diversity and variety. And now I pass the word to Maria, who's going to talk a bit deeper about the concept behind the book. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm gonna try and whiz through. This book for us is essentially a stitching process of trying to bring back into contact what's become separated and what's become separate. The aim is to bring us into connection with a feminine consciousness that really has the capacity to restore us to a much greater state of wholeness, both individually and collectively. We are living through times in which huge collective splits are becoming amplified in the wider world stage. And we come to see very clearly how the wound of separateness has become infected in our society. And it oozes out of every societal pore we seem to have and manage. Sadly, it looks that unless things become infected, there is very little hope of action. It's a bit like people that come into therapy for the first time. We tend to look inwards once our defenses have collapsed and our symptoms have become intolerable. On a collective level, our collective defenses are certainly overstretched and we're standing before a very dangerous edge. We're being called to either integrate or demise. This book, The Restoration of the Feminine, the Psychedelic Experience, for us, these are deeply political matters. The practice and ways of medicine have political ramifications because they represent direct spiritual power, energy that cannot be controlled by man-made hierarchies or systems of domination. They place us in direct contact with chaos in its original sense of the primordial vastness. All these quotes I have apart from our book, and this is from Max Dashin. Separateness is systemic. It starts with the other and it creeps into our most intimate connections, and it creeps into our connection with our own self. Likewise, oppression that arises out of the altar of separateness is also systemic. It is the feminine, it is nature, it is the underprivileged, it is the third world countries, it is the refugees, it is the homeless and the displaced that are the weakest link in our society. Now, in systemic thought, they say that a system is as resilient, as solid as its weakest link. The weakest links are not negligible. It's really where care and attention needs to be directed at the most. It's what we need to take into account more clearly. Make no mistake, all these things are linked and our response to them is also linked. All these things are political and our response can be nothing less than a really rebellious one. We're going to need very solid integrity, ethics and determination if we are to survive the current socio-political and environmental tensions, or we risk being ripped apart. This collection of essays has come out of a very deep sense in us and in what we're witnessing in the collective world stage of the need to remember the feminine essence back into consciousness. The feminine we call on in this book is not confined to female bodies. It is part of every soul. The feminine is a collective force, and every collective force belongs to all of us collectively. Kathleen Harrison says, "It is important to realize how we each hold within us the masculine and the feminine elements. These well-met opposites are swirling, dancing arm in arm, or sometimes in battle, but they're both always within every single one of us. The feminine we call on resides in men as well as women, and it needs to be nourished and strengthened in all of us, for all of us. The feminine consciousness brings back into awareness our interconnectedness with each other as a species, with all other species, and with nature as a whole. It reminds us that we're really part of a glorious, interconnected, intelligent, and very purposeful ecosystem, an ecosystem that is fully alive. The feminine consciousness of interconnectedness points us back to our shared source in the all-emerging void. It reminds us that when we stand in the thresholds of life and death, we're all equal in our collective fate. It doesn't matter which culture, which class, or which creed we have come from. It takes us back to our shared humanity and our true size. We're just specks of dust in this glorious ecosystem we're part of. And our part, purpose, and path here is to serve the life of what needs to live and to serve the death of what needs to die. And that's a pretty complex task. Humanity has got involved in the forces of disintegration, death, and destruction. Disintegration in general, when it's aligned with the forces of regeneration, like the death of winter that feeds the spring ahead, it is aligned with serving life, but the destruction humanity is getting involved with at the moment is threatening life all around, so it's not of that kind. In this book we aim to address some of the inequalities of the psychedelic community by bringing more feminine voices and more feminine matters to the surface, by bringing the unseen into greater view. This book does not address or restore by any means all the inequalities we foster in the psychedelic community. It points to some, and there are a lot more to look at. The proportion of those that are well off in today's world, with the proportion of women that have managed to lead safe lives in today's world, with the proportion of nature that is still untouched and vibrant in today's world, are sadly interlinked. We cannot restore or address one without the other. We need a really wide systemic lens if we are to really address what has become infected in our world today. And most importantly, we need a whole load of compassion if we are to make space for the dialogues we need that can bridge all the otherness our world has fallen into today. Remembering the vitality of feminine consciousness, her lost lineage and practices, and her deeply embodied intuitive wisdom will be much needed resources in the challenges we face today. Has this changed? Chiara Baldini says, women play the fundamental role in the administration of ecstatic rites, an altered stage of consciousness where a spiritual technology that women use to attain mystical knowledge about the paradoxical nature of reality and about humans' places within the natural world, the natural order. In this book, we're calling on the feminine that resides in all of us, alongside nature, and her regenerative capacities for integration. For humanity to move forward at this point, it is essential that we retrieve and integrate our underdeveloped capacities, instead of consistently relying on a one-sidedness that has been overdeveloped, which is a very masculine one-sidedness that our society uses consistently. We need to retrieve the feminine qualities that are really dormant potential in all of us. And if we do that, I think we're going to recover and remember treasures that are lost and gone for a very long time, and medicines that we all long for, whichever side of the divides we have fallen on along the way. Adam Andrews says, in times when the patriarchal excesses of modernity seem to be bringing us closer and closer to planetary collapse, psychedelic and plant medicine seem to be potent, powerful tools and allies in our quest to shake off the grip of those systems from our individual and collective consciousness. This is an essential step towards a more conscious paradigm of integrated and mature masculine-feminine synergy and a better integration between rational and erotic medicine. Psychedelic and altered states allow us a unique glimpse into our unconscious, and it helps us unearth what has been lost and hidden. And the shadow spaces hold space alongside potential. In the realms of feminine consciousness and in the shadow side, we can retrieve the medicines of interconnectedness, fertility, regeneration, compassion, filling, embodied wisdom, kinship, and belonging. If all these forces were to return to our world today, we would have a very deep restructuring going on. Humanity has fallen captive to a great forgetting. We have somehow managed to go through cycles of collective events that have been very traumatic. We haven't assimilated them, and we keep finding ourselves compulsively repeating the trauma. We have come up against immense resistance from the ossified status quo. In terms of the changes and the challenges we really have to navigate ahead. As we stand before the thresholds of sociopolitical and environmental collapse and earthquakes on a metaphorical and a most literal sense, we're going to need all the resources we can muster. Clarissa Pinkola writes, this is not in her book, she has another brilliant book, a few. In intercultural inquiries, I have been impressed with groups that are pushed out of the mainstream and who yet retain and strengthen their integrity. Even so, it is fascinating to see that time after time, the disenfranchised group that maintains its dignity is often eventually admired and sought out by the very mainstream that once ousted it. I am delighted someone has put this into words, because it lays bare the responsibilities and the consequence of it all. It really tells us that we need to be very aware about how we care about the psychedelic community. It is inevitable that the psychedelic community will leak once again into the mainstream. We're already seeing signs of that. I'm not here to declare this as a victory or as a fall. I think it's going to be a very fragile process. It's going to unearth a lot of shadow in the way, and we're going to need to really hold on to our values throughout it all. But it is essential that we maintain awareness of our values and our integrity. We need to be aware that we're caring for a baby that will grow into adulthood and find its place into the wider social context. Do we want that offspring to carry something of value to the world? Do we want it to carry something vibrant, integral, and potent within its soul? Do we want it to carry the seeds of change forward? If so, we really need to disentangle our community from its embrace with the wider oppressive, discriminatory dynamics, from the wider culture. We have to be very, very careful about this. If we want to make a real difference, because we don't want that child going back and carrying more of the same, if we want to make a difference, we have to cultivate its capacity to integrate division and to stand in the fertile, potent wisdom of greater wholeness, where everything has its place and it's supported by the forces of collaboration. This book aims to bring back the feminine in its many forms and guises back into clearer view for the psychedelic community to be fed, nourished, inspired, taxed, and motivated by. The wider psychedelic community, resourced by the vision of the feminine and resourced by altered and psychedelic states of consciousness, must meet our current challenges from the forefront of inclusivity, matching visionary poetics with decisive action. And I will leave you with a last quote from the incredible Anna Luke, This is a call to the dark tides of menstruation, rather than the clinical exactness of menstruation. A call to the slippery, elliptical, wet, delicious, beating heart of the darkness. This darkness is not of the brain, but of the regenerative darkness of the womb. Thank you very much.